Last week on round sailing, we received 540 kilos of epoxy that we will use for laminating the hull. Johan and Vera finished sanding the hull.
So as you can see, I'm using this sort of plastic.
Trying to fix those small wind leaks, get the barn as windproofed as possible.
So we're more or less finished now with the lamination tent, or the tent over the hull inside the barn. I'm standing outside in the old stable right now, but I thought I should give you guys a tour of the whole setup on how we're thinking that this should work. Normally we have two entrances going into the barn, but we have closed up that one. And also the same with that hole that we have here in the middle, with plastic both on the inside and on the outside to create an air gap, some insulation between this room and the barn. We will try to only have one opening going in and out of the barn, and that is of course to try to keep as much of the hot air as possible inside of the barn. But we might open up that side as well later on if you find that it's too much of a hassle to only have one entrance. On this side, we're thinking we might build what do you call it, like an airlock, like a small room here that you first enter with the plastic wall here as well, and before you open the next plastic sheet to enter the actual barn. And that way we could close off and have less leakage of cold air rushing in when we're opening up here. Right now we only have these two plastic sheets with some air in between, and actually I think this will be enough, so we'll try it like this first. So this is how it looks on the inside with the big plastic wall. I think it turned out pretty good. Plenty of floor space to move stuff around. I put down these wooden strips along the floor so we could get that angle, and also to get the plastic to stay tight. Back here under the hull we have a 9 kilowatt heater, and we have another one that we can move around out here. Those two combined are on 18 kilowatts. We now have plastic and like a room behind us. We also put plastic on the gate back there to make that wall behind the plastic airtight as well. And we have plastic on the floor, or on the ground actually, and this is just a way to try to prevent moisture coming up from the ground, because this is really just the outside. So if it rains a lot, that could be a potential problem, so that's why we have the plastic there. Fire extinguisher, we will have another one at the stern of the boat. I think in total 3 of them. And then I have fixed the chimney for the diesel heater, some more insulation. And I test ran this yesterday as well for over 1 hour, just to see that everything works the way it should. And it's totally fine with the plastic here. It doesn't get very hot at all, so it's very well insulated, the exhaust pipe. And in 1 hour we managed to raise the temp in here with 16, almost 17 degrees Celsius over the outside temp. And then we stopped it and we turned on one of the 9 kilowatt heaters, the electrical ones, and it actually continued to go up after 1 hour with the electrical heater. But I should add that yesterday there was hardly any wind at all outside. and I think that will be the biggest problem, because if you have a lot of wind outside, the barn is not totally sealed, and that will give us some air movement of the air between this plastic and the outer wall, and yeah, then the insulation properties of the barn, or the gap, the air gap here in between, gets destroyed if that air moves out. So everything comes down to how cold will it be when it's time to do the lamination. Up in the roof, I have one sensor up there to control the humidity level and the temp, and also the barometric pressure, so we can see how much under pressure we have in here, because there will be a slight under pressure because of the diesel heater. And I have another sensor inside of the hull also to check the humidity level and the temp. So I think we have a pretty good setup here now. On this side here with the plastic wall is more or less the same as the other side, but I have stapled it to the pallets that the machines are standing on. And I couldn't really get more floor space on this side, since it will be a lot of work to move all of these machines that I have here. And yeah, and then we have the preparation room in here. The fiberglass and the epoxy, and I have bought this pump now, so we can get the epoxy out from the barrels. I have cleaned up this pump, so I don't know if you're going to use that for the lamination. I'm thinking that we will just measure by weight or volume and mix it in these buckets, because the quantities that we're going to use will be quite a lot to get out from that pump. Yeah, so I think we have a pretty good setup now. In here it's very warm at the moment. We have 25 degrees and yeah, 35% humidity level, so very dry and warm. And at the moment it's pretty warm outside. We have around 9 to 10 degrees Celsius. So I really hope that we can have that level staying with us for a few more weeks. At least we can get started with this whole process. Well, yeah, from the testing I did yesterday, I think this will actually work a little bit better than I first thought. So maybe we can save a little bit of money and not using as much diesel as I first thought we would have to do this whole operation.
Johan starts to measure where the widest fiberglass cloth will be placed.
So yesterday I cut the first piece of fiberglass for the keel recess, the first layer, the biggest layer, and it's a pretty big piece. It's almost 5.8 meters long, and the full width of a roll, 127 centimeters. And the plan for today is to cut the rest of the layers and to plan everything out and prepare the vacuum bagging material and everything. And if we have time, I will also prime the surface of the hull today. And as you can imagine, since this is the first time I do something, a lamination job this big, there's a lot of thinking going on. You only have one go at this, so you don't want to make any mistakes. That, of course, makes things take a bit longer than they probably should.
Det är på andra sidan.
Ja, ta det så. Så du tar 54. Eller ta 8.
Hold on. This is layer number 5, right?
Yeah.
And the smallest one. And this will be 800 millimeters wide. And the length is 5,300 millimeters.
Just about.
No. Got a delivery. The last of the glass fiber arriving now. Tung.
So this was the last of the fiberglass, and this is unidirectional fiberglass. And then we'll use, it's pretty narrow, 250 millimeter wide, unidirectional, that we will use where the shame plates are going to sit as an extra reinforcement on the outside and on the inside of the hull. Spread out like this, so to take up the loads from the shame plates. So this is some really heavy stuff. It's 1,200 grams per square meter. And we'll use this maybe 1 or 2 layers on each side of the hull. It's really heavy. This roll is 30 kilos.
The motor scissors broke when it fell down, so it's back to normal scissors. Now this layer will get rounded corners as well. All of the layers will have that. I'm gonna try to see if the ball has a good radius. I think this looks good, so we'll go with this.
Fix it.
Yeah, we fixed it.
We've just installed a wood-burning stove in the house, and it has gotten so warm and cozy inside. This is the best spot in the house now. After lunch, we cut out the rest of the layers. Having round corners instead of sharp ones probably doesn't matter, but we thought it looked better. When the fiberglass was cut out, we continued with the 4 different layers for the vacuum bagging.
So Malin just left. She had to go and pick up Vera from kindergarten, but I will continue working for a few more hours today. We managed to cut all the fiberglass, all the lengths that we need for the keel area, 5 layers of 600 gram. And we also did cut all the fabric and material that we're going to need for the vacuum bagging. But we might have to come back and cut even more of that, since I highly doubt that we can wet out all the 5 layers of fiberglass on this surface area within the time frame of the epoxy, so we can get that vacuum bagging going before it's too late. So I'm thinking we cut it in half, maybe do 2 layers first, and then another 3 layers later on. But first, before we do that, I want to put a coat of epoxy on the wood and let that cure overnight. And that's just to a way to prevent the wood from gassing, so we get air bubbles beneath the fiberglass. We want to lock that in first. Yeah, and this whole process of laminating the keel area will be really telling for us on how much work and effort there will be to laminate the rest of the hull, how much time it will take to wet out the fiberglass that we have, the 600 gram fiberglass with epoxy. So this will be a nice first step to dip our toes into this whole massive project of laminating the hull.
You shouldn't mix too much epoxy at once, because that can lead to a violent exothermic reaction, causing a thermal runaway that could potentially start a fire. Johan pours the epoxy in a tray with larger surface area as quickly as possible, so that the heat can dissipate more easily. This also gives us a longer working time with the epoxy. The morning after, Johan sanded the epoxy with an 80 grit paper, so the next layer of epoxy will get a good bond.
So the keel area is now ready and prepped for the fiberglass, but it's already after lunch today, so I'll wait until tomorrow before I start with the actual lamination. So I think I'll take the rest of the day to just make sure that I have everything prepared. And I need to do some stuff with the vacuum hoses for the vacuum pump. I was actually quite surprised on how much epoxy I have to use as a primer here. I almost used 1.6 kilos of epoxy just for this surface area around the keel. So that means that for the whole hull, we will need almost somewhere between 17 and 20 kilos of epoxy just to put on a primer layer. So quite a lot. And one of the reasons why we're using it that I forgot to mention before is just, besides this off-gassing of the wood that we want to prevent that, it's also that we don't want the wood to wick too much of the epoxy from the fiberglass, so that we have a starved joint between the fiberglass and the wood, because that can happen if the wood is not coated before and it wicks just too much epoxy. So this way, with the primer, we try to prevent that. So it's Thursday today when I'm filming this, and the video comes up tomorrow, so we're almost in real time. And that means that the actual lamination of the keel area will be in next week's episode. But thanks a lot for watching this week, and we hope to see you again next Friday. And as always, a big thank you to all of our patrons. See you next week. Bye-bye.